Well, good evening, everyone. I am Torsha Johnson of Higher Dimension Church. I'm here with my husband and senior pastor and leader of Higher Dimension Church. And we wanted to come in and visit with you all to discuss just and talk about, have a discussion and forum around the COVID-19 vaccinations and the hesitancy that's existing right now. Once upon a time, there was a lack of vaccine. Now we have more vaccines and individuals who are joining us. And we want to talk about that. So we invited some professionals who know about this, who live in this space, to help us combat the anxiety, the fear, and the myths that are out there.
I think it's just so important. The Bible talks about safety comes in a multitude of counseling, and God bless individuals with insight. So we wanted to take a moment to kind of reflect on this journey, because I think oftentimes we get insight through reflection. So we are reflecting on vaccination and the benefits of that, the blessing of that, and how it's going to benefit just all of us. And we thought it would be prudent just to invite someone who on the front line who can give us some insight and hopefully mitigate just our stress, our concerns. The Bible says that a lot of people perish because of lack of knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And so we want to make certain that we're knowledgeable and we understand. And God has taught us that we live in between facts and faith, right? And that's where we are. Like, here are the facts, here's the faith. So we're glad to have Dr. Raphael here, Dr. Satcher here, and we certainly believe it's going to be a great night.
We do. And we want to thank Texas Children's Hospital for connecting us with these healthcare professionals to talk about just the vaccination hesitancy. So let me let you know who will be discussing the forum with on tonight. We have Dr. Jean L. Raphael, MD. He is section head for academic general pediatrics, associate professor of pediatrics, and associate vice chair for community health in the Department of Pediatrics at Baylor College of Medicine and Texas Children's Hospital. He's nationally recognized. He has all the credentials. Dr. Raphael, thank you so much for being here this evening. We appreciate you and taking the time out to join us on tonight. And we also have with us Dr. Dawana White-Satcher, MD. She has been attending physician. She's an attending physician at Texas Children's Hospital since 2006. And her clinical practice is at Texas Children's Hospital Palm Center, where she serves as the associate medical director. She is also an assistant professor of pediatrics, academic general pediatrics at Baylor College of Medicine. All right, Bears, I know y'all out there. And where she serves as director of one of the medical school's learning communities. Thank you so much, Dr. White-Satcher, for joining us as well. And then we hope to see Dr. Rayne Rouce, who just had to hop off. But if she hops back in, we'll introduce her as well. So thank you all so much for joining us this evening. And we're looking forward to the discussion and just the questions. And we want to invite the audience to participate. This is interactive. So we want you all to ask questions where you can ask them directly to the doctors who are on this forum on tonight. And we want to open up with an icebreaker. We have some questions for you. So we want to put this poll up, and we want to ask those of you who are participating in this Facebook forum to answer these questions for us. Have you gotten the vaccine? And if so, how many doses? And if you have not, are you planning to get the vaccine? Go ahead and submit those questions. We're interested in knowing how you feel about it. If you are watching us Facebook Live and you did not tune in via Zoom, we want you to answer those questions in the chat for us. We'd love to hear from you as well. Thank you, Jordan, for those. All righty. So we're going to hop in and go into some questions.
All right. Well, Dr. Satcher, in your opinion, why are some Black Americans concerned to take the COVID-19 vaccination?
Well, I think anytime something is new, there's of course some hesitancy of anyone, and I think it's reasonable for everyone to be a little bit hesitant with anything. But in the African American population in general, historically there are things that have happened where, like the Tuskegee study, the Henrietta Lacks situation, where African Americans were taken advantage of because the Caucasian population in general, their acceptance of this vaccine has been much higher than in our community. So they're getting protected right now at a higher rate. And so it's a stark difference between what's happening in our community. So I hope discussions like this can help reassure the community that the vaccine is safe, and we would not be advocating for it if it were not safe. And I think, there are good physicians, African American, Caucasian, all kinds of who are advocating for it. But in particular, you can see that there are many African American physicians who want you to understand that we're out here advocating for it. And if it wasn't safe, believe you me, we wouldn't be telling people to suggest they take the vaccine. So.
Yeah, Dr. Raphael, initially, I was kind of skeptical about taking it. And so I prayed, certainly we got some insight, talked to some doctors, Dr. Morgan, out of Atlanta. And, my wife and I took it, my children, they are taking it. But a lot of questions I'm hearing is the vaccine was developed so quick. And so that's why people like, man, let me just wait a year. I want to make sure you make it past it. Like, that's kind of what, I've been hearing. So can you kind of speak to that? Like, the vaccine was developed so quick, is it going to work? Is something going to happen? So can you respond to that?
Absolutely. So, I think that's one of the biggest questions of why people are so hesitant. They say, remember, this was also called Operation Warp Speed. And so think about what that does to your mind, because it just automatically says to you, this is something that was done really, really quickly. So I think that was probably a name that didn't fit and didn't build public trust. And so let me tell you why, it wasn't as fast as we think. So one is that we have experiences with these viruses for decades. It's just different versions of the virus. So, we've been studying this for a long time. It's just, this is different from the others. So there is that history of doing research on this virus. And so that's one part of it. The second part of it is that, some people say, oh, there's new technology to these vaccines. How did that happen so quickly? So these technologies that people are worried about, they've been studying them for years, for a long time as well. They've been looking at them for cancer therapy, other types of conditions as well. This mRNA vaccine that people have been worried about with the Pfizer and Moderna, they've been studied for a long time for other conditions. And so this is one of those times where now the time has come during this pandemic that they've been, studied well, and they've been studied in, specifically for this virus, and they work. And the other thing I always try to tell people in terms of thinking of an analogy, it's like if someone said, I need some work done at my house. And so you say to someone, well, how much is that going to take? How much time? And someone says that's going to take 6 months. Now you say, you know what? I'm going to draw back the time so that the person who's supposed to do this approval will do it on time. This person will do it on time. This person will do it all the time. We're going to get rid of all the red tape. We're still going to go through every single exact procedure as it's supposed to happen, but we're going to get rid of the red tape. And then also too, now there are all these resources that the governments are putting in, these private companies are putting in as well. So now again, think about that analogy of someone doing work at your house. Now, if you said, hey, I have a lot more money to do this, then they hire more workers, they work longer hours, and it all gets done much more quickly. So I just think, to me, that really basic comparison helps me think about how this happens. So one is that we knew this virus for a long time, or versions of different types of viruses like this for a long time. Two, the technology for the vaccines we've been working on for a long time. And three, there are just so many resources that have been poured into it that it makes it possible to get rid of some of that red tape, to get people focused much more on getting this done. So again, warp speed was probably never a great term for this, but it's really just the benefit of all the scientific research that's been going on for decades.
That's really good. Love that analogy.
Yeah.
Dr. White-Satcher, like myself, my husband shared, we were skeptical at first. We ourselves, were hesitant at first, but we sought out information from healthcare professionals so that we can get the truth, behind the matter of the reason of why we need it, number one, and the fact that it was in fact safe. So when you hear safe, you think, oh, okay, I get the vaccine, I am good, no issues. How do we ease the comfort of those individuals who hear that it's safe, but they also hear that people are having the issues like with the J&J vaccination, having blood clots, or, the stories that get pushed to the forefront about people having allergic reactions? How do we combat that? We say it's safe, but we still see that there are issues people are having.
Well, you have to remember that nothing is foolproof in this world. And, you can take a blood pressure medication that everybody else in your family has taken for years, and you took it, and you were just the 1 in a million person who had a reaction. Like, stuff happens sometimes, so we can't guarantee everything in life. We know that it's been looked at. Millions of people have gotten the vaccine. The side effects are rare. A lot of time when they're looking at things, if they do see a pattern, so for instance, with the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, even before that, there was some concern with possibly the earlier vaccines maybe causing Erb's palsy. And so they stopped for a minute and said, wait, let's look at it. Let's check out the numbers. Let's look what we're dealing with. They found out, you know what? The number of people who were getting Bell's palsy, I'm sorry, it's Bell's palsy. But the number of people who were getting it, there were more people in the general population getting it naturally than there were people who got the vaccine who were getting it. So things happen. And so if you look at a population of people, stuff is going to happen to them. So they did the same thing with the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. And they looked at it, and very small numbers of people actually developed this as a potential side effect, and only in a small population of people. So women of childbearing age. And so it's a rare possible side effect that someone could get. And we're talking extremely rare. But when you compare it with the potential of not getting vaccinated and getting COVID, and the percentage of people who are having life-altering illnesses from COVID and even dying. So the risk of, Dr. Raphael, what were you telling me the numbers? You hit the numbers right there in terms of.
So to date, it's been 15 people have had the blood clot out of 6.8 million people who have gotten the J&J vaccine. So you don't even have to be good at math to understand that is really, really rare. And as Dr. White-Satcher said, compared to the risks of what can happen when you get COVID-19, because you can also get blood clots from COVID-19, as well as all the other things that we know can lead to severe complications. So again, 15 people out of 6.8 million people who've gotten doses.
Mm-hmm. And it speaks to what the government is doing. They're watching the side effects. They're jumping on any potential side effect just to make sure that they can be assured that it is not related to the vaccine at all. Because people could have swept it under the rug. No one could have brought it to the attention, but what did they do? They made sure that the general population was aware and said, wait, let's hold on, let us look at it before we release it back into the general population. So that's something that should make you feel even safer, that people weren't hiding this. As soon as it became apparent that there might be a pattern, they started to look at it.
That's really good. Those are great responses. So Dr. Raphael, some people may decide, you know what, maybe I will get the vaccination, but can I select the one that I want? I mean, there are a lot of vaccinations out here, and should I select one over the other? Should I get Pfizer? Should I get Moderna? Or should I get Johnson & Johnson? What do you say to the listener who's trying to decide whether or not they're going to get it, and if they do, which one should they get?
That's a great question. It's just so funny. It says so much about us. You know, we're used to living in a society where we get to pick things, right? Where we say, I like this coffee better than that one. I like this pizza place better than the other. And so now in the midst of a pandemic, I think it's really thinking about what are the risks and benefits. So we know what COVID-19 can do, particularly in our communities where we're overrepresented in hospitalizations and death. So the consequences are really severe. So my advice to individuals is if there are vaccines before you, just get the vaccine that is available. I think now we're in a situation where you're seeing a lot of Pfizer out there, a lot of Moderna, you're seeing Johnson and Johnson. And so we're getting to a point where there are multiple vaccines out there. But if there weren't, I would take the vaccine that's in front of me, because when you do the risk and benefit of it, you're much, much, much better off getting any of the vaccines, because they're all exceptionally highly effective. And compare that to getting COVID-19. So to me, when we're starting to split hairs about, well, this one's one dose, this one's this one's that, again, they're highly, highly effective. And when you look at the alternative of getting COVID-19, it's not even worth waiting around debating to think about which vaccine you should get. In a perfect world, it'd be great if we could do that. But again, you're really quibbling about like small little differences between them.
Yeah, no, that's good. You know, God has blessed me with 4 kids, and we have a team as well going to Lamar, and we also have grandbabies now. Can you imagine? Like, we have grandbabies, and is there a vaccination for teens and for babies?
So currently, the Pfizer vaccine is available for anyone 16 years or older. So anyone 16 or above can get it. Unfortunately, we don't yet have a vaccine that's been approved for younger children.
Okay.
They have completed studies in the 12 to 15-year-old. And I'll let you know, my son, I was so concerned about COVID. My 13-year-old son participated in this study and potentially got a vaccine, because there was a chance he could be protected. I felt safe enough about the vaccine that I wanted him to have even the potential of being protected. And so those studies are coming to a conclusion. And so in the next, few months, hopefully the next group of children or people who will be approved to get the vaccine will be in that 12 to 15-year range. And I expect it'll be both for Pfizer and Moderna. So those studies are still going on. So hopefully before the fall, for the school term, hopefully the 12 to 15-year-olds will be vaccinated. And then it's going to follow suit. So currently they're doing studies in the younger children and the babies. And so eventually, once those studies are completed, then children will be able to have it. And it's just looking at it just to make sure that, dosing is right in the children, that children aren't having any unsuspected reactions. It's not anticipated, but we're just being cautious. And I think we should be glad that we're being cautious. So the more adults that get vaccinated, the better they can protect their children. And so that's really what we have to push for right now.
Yeah. How your son doing?
He's doing just fine. And in fact, I will say, he developed a cold and a fever the other day. And I was like, okay, I want to see if his vaccine worked. We went and we got him tested, COVID negative, but I wasn't as worried about it because I know he'd gotten, a vaccine. So
did he have any major side effects when he took it?
He had the same exact side effects I had when I got my vaccine, and he was part of a Pfizer study. I was a little tired that day after getting it, maybe about 24 hours after getting it. Just wasn't I wasn't going 100%. My arm was sore. That was about it. The second time I got the shot, he didn't have this. I got actually a swollen lymph node up under my arm. And they're seeing that with some of the vaccines now. So it was sore for a couple of days and I was tired. Okay. Compared to what could have happened if I got COVID, that's nothing. So one day of kind of being out of it, maybe just I took a little Tylenol and Motrin, and I worked both days after the vaccine. So it wasn't debilitating. I just didn't feel 100%. And so when you compare that to what it is if I had gotten COVID, no comparison.
Right.
So Dr. Raphael, just to kind of piggyback on that. So we've taken, our shot, Moderna. Should we continue to wear the mask, social distance? If so, why?
It's a good question. So, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, they keep revising their guidelines as they get more and more information on the effectiveness of the vaccine. So what they're saying now is for people who are fully vaccinated, there's more and more freedoms. So People who are completely vaccinated can be indoors with other people who are fully vaccinated. People who are fully vaccinated can be indoors with one family from another, meaning one other household that may be unvaccinated. So example might be if you have a certain relative that's living in another house and it's just that one household. If you're vaccinated, you could be indoors with that person. And so where we still want to be careful is when we're outdoors, still masked, still socially distanced, because you don't know how many people who are around who are unvaccinated, and there's still going to be some risk. But if you look on the CDC website, you can see, and again, some of these things are changing in real time in terms of what vaccinated people can do. So I think that is another benefit to getting vaccinated, because we think about all this time in the last year, we've spent socially isolated from each other, not seeing relatives, not seeing grandparents, not seeing kids or grandkids. And so what this vaccine offers is the opportunity for some of our worlds to start to come back. And again, as you look at these guidelines, there are more and more freedoms for people who are completely vaccinated. But at the same time, when you're in the general public, you want to maintain all those public health measures. You don't want to expose yourself, expose other people, and you do not want to do large events. And so I think that's what some people ask as well, if I'm vaccinated, can I go have a big, huge family reunion? That is not a good idea. So we're still working our way through it, but in sort of small steps. So we just have to be patient, but understand there's more and more freedom that comes with being vaccinated.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you for that, Dr. Raphael. I see that we have Dr. Rayne Rouce, who's been able to join us. Thank you so much, Dr. Rouce, for being here with us. I would like to formally introduce you to our audience on tonight. Dr. Rouce is a physician scientist in pediatric oncology at Baylor College of Medicine at Texas Children's Hospital, who spends the majority of her time leading clinical research studies in patients with the difficult to treat blood cancers. She performs research in the laboratory looking at ways to use the immune system to target and kill cancers. Thus has been able to use her immunology expertise to pass on her understanding of exactly how the COVID-19 vaccine safely provide protection. Thank you so much, Dr. Rouce, for being here. We know you are still at work tending to those who need it most, so we really value your time and you being here on tonight. We have a question from someone in the audience tonight. They're asking, can you share with us the knowledge gathered thus far on getting the vaccination during pregnancy and the impact on infants?
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for having me. I apologize for my tardiness, but better late than never. That's a really great question. And early on, there was a lot of question about, is it safe to get vaccinated when you're pregnant? How will this affect your baby? What we do know is that moms who get vaccinated during pregnancy will typically pass on some of those antiviral antibodies to the baby after the baby is born. So it can pass on immunity to your actual newborn. Everyone should talk to their OB-GYN to figure out the best time for vaccination. And I do know some people who feel more comfortable doing it at a certain time, but I have several friends who got vaccinated during pregnancy. Two of them have had their babies since, and we're really excited because they were able to find that the baby actually had antibodies that were passed on from the mom, for example, in the breast milk. So it actually is a way of protecting your infant when we know right now newborns are not actually eligible for a clinical trial. So I see it as a way, in the same way that we want to protect our babies from any and everything in the world. This is a special opportunity to be able to do that while they're still inside of you. Mm-hmm. Great question.
Yes.
Yeah, that's really good. That was good. Yeah, Dr. Rouce, can you speak to herd immunity and what will it take for us to get there, especially in some of the vulnerable communities?
Absolutely. So this is such an important topic. And, you know, COVID-19 is something that all of us have had to deal with, especially it has disproportionately affected our communities. My brother had it twice and was very sick in the ICU, and fortunately is doing better now. And so what you will hear most people say is that you can reach herd immunity through either a combination of vaccination or people who have been infected and have actual antibodies that can fight. The magic number, there's not one special magic number, but most people will say we need at least 75%, 75 to 80% of the population to either have been vaccinated against COVID-19 or have been infected and have actual good anti-COVID-19 antibodies. The reason it's so important, and obviously none of us want to seek out getting infected with COVID, right? Because of all the dangers. So the reason that it's important to try to really make sure enough of us get vaccinated is because people who are not vaccinated, we're hearing about all these variants and strains, right? Those strains right now are covered by the currently approved vaccines, okay? So the currently approved vaccines are able to cover the vast majority of the strains and protect us. That's not a guarantee that that will always be the case. So what we don't want is to have a large population of people who are not vaccinated, who get infected with one of the other strains, and then we start to see bigger outbreaks similar to what's happening in India, for example. So the more that we can encourage those around us to get vaccinated, the better it will be for all of us to safely know that if we're in a crowd of people and we don't have our mask on, that we're not going to be infected.
Thank you for that. Listen, we are having a conversation about vaccination and taking your vaccine shots and all that kind of stuff. And we just believe that safety comes in a multitude of counsel, and it is so critical to invite people who are subject matter experts. You know, the Bible says that we perish because of a lack of knowledge. God bless doctors, right? Like with wisdom, with insight to help and guide us and to direct us. We live in between facts and faith, right? And it is so important to make sure that we are considering the data and discernment as we make decisions. So we want to encourage you, submit your questions. You know, they are right here. They have budgeted some time to listen to us and to give us feedback. So we got some questions that are coming in, and you on?
I would like to ask Dr. Raphael this question. So we'd like to know, will we have to get booster shots or yearly COVID-19 shots like with the flu, or will we be immune for life once we get the vaccinations?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's on all of our minds, right? And so what they're doing now is they're studying all the people who initially got the vaccines in the research studies. And the longer they follow those folks out, the longer they can tell how long the vaccine lasts. And so I think where we are now, I think we're at about 4 months and counting. And so some people get confused because they see it in the news. They say, oh, the vaccine lasts 4 months. They say only 4 months, but what the scientists are really saying, at least 4 months. And so we're moving on to 4 months to 6 months. And so what happens is at certain key points, they release more information on how people are doing. And all the information they're saying now, people are still up in the, the vaccines are still 90-something% protective. And so we just have to keep waiting. So it may be that at some point we all need to get a booster, but we just don't know at this point. And so what we have to do is just keep waiting for, these research highlights to come out. We get more information, and then we'll find out where we go. The other possibility is it could be that at some point, if there are a decent number of variants that are out there, there may be a booster that sort of contains a little bit more of an update with some of these variants in there. And that's, those are the types of things that can happen with other vaccines that are seasonal, like the flu vaccine. But right now, it's just keep watching those folks who got the vaccines in the original research studies, see how they do, and then that keeps telling us how much farther it'll take us.
Mm-hmm. Good. Yes. Thank you for that. We have a question that came in from the audience. Can someone provide the top 10 ingredients in the vaccines? Their concern is, as a family, there's a history of aborted fetal cells in manufactured vaccines. And also, do you know the likelihood of shedding for those who are vaccinated?
I can address that question. I actually, if you will allow me to share my screen really quickly, I can share because these are a whole bunch of words.
Okay, we'll see if we're able to do it. There you go.
Tips, y'all. So for example, these are the top most common ingredients that are in the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccines. So while this may look like alphabet soup to y'all, my doctors on here are nodding and looking because these are common ingredients that we often put even when you get IV fluid. So these are nutrients.
Okay.
Potassium chloride, potassium, you guys have heard of potassium. They tell you eat your bananas, phosphate, sodium chloride. This is just salt water, basically. This is just fancy phosphate. So sucrose is basically sugar. And then polyethylene glycol is one of the ones that is basically in a lot of medicines that we take. And sometimes you can have an allergy to it. So most people know if they've had an allergy to this. I want to point out that what you do not see on here is you don't see any sort of fetal cell line or immortalized cell line. So I want to address that because I can certainly understand why people, whether it be for religious reasons or moral reasons, may be concerned about that. There are no fetal cells in any of the vaccines. The reason that this came up is that as researchers, you will create what we call an immortalized cell line. So y'all remember Henrietta Lacks, right? And we heard about Henrietta Lacks's cells that came from her actual cancer cells, and they were able to keep them growing in the laboratory to use them in research. This is similar, where these are cells that a long time ago came from tissue that may have been fetal tissue and are immortalized. These vaccines have not been made by hurting any infant, any baby who is miscarried. This is not how this works, okay? So much so that the Pope and a number of religious leaders have actually come out and said, we absolutely recommend these vaccines. You do not need to believe that getting this vaccine is actually endorsing something that you may not believe in. So it's really important to know, because the top 10 ingredients of the vaccines that are not the actual vaccine itself look very similar to some of the things that you may find in Tylenol, some of the things you may find in something that you use for constipation over the counter, okay? So the vaccine companies are certainly not trying to trick you by not telling everything that's in there. And none of the vaccines that are approved include any fetal tissues or fetal cells. They do not.
Great. Thank you for that information. Yes, that's powerful information for us. That's good to know. So will it ever become mandatory for people to get the COVID-19 vaccine? You know, our children, we have 2 high schoolers, and they've stayed home for at-home learning. And they've been doing exceptionally well. So we thank God for that. But eventually, you know, we have a graduate here pretty soon. He'll be going to the University of Texas. And then we have our daughter who will be, you know, finishing her education at Lamar High School. So we kind of want to know, will they require our children to get vaccinated in order to be in school? Public
so it's going to vary. So I think it's going to vary between school departments, school districts, it's going to vary between colleges. There's some colleges who are already currently saying, if you want to enroll next year and come on campus, we need you to get a vaccine. And all children above 18, presuming everyone who's at college is over 16, there'll be a few exceptions, but some schools are saying, we want you here, but we want you to be safe. Just like we want you to get your meningitis vaccine, we want you to get your COVID vaccine. And so that is an acceptable policy at many schools. I think because it's not yet approved in the younger children, we're not seeing that in the school districts right now in terms of the elementary, middle, or high schools at this point. Is it possible that that will change? Possibly. And I think time is going to tell. I think the purpose of doing that is to protect everyone. And so I think we just have to wait and see. Some employers may make it a requirement, but it's too early to say. And so I don't have a crystal ball, so I can't say for sure, but I anticipate that with time, if COVID continues to be the problem that it is now, that more schools will start to recommend that children get the vaccine.
That's good.
Dr. Raphael.
My son, who is also at Lamar, is dying to get the vaccine. He's always asking, I'm like, you're too young. It's not legal. He's like, you just slip one over on the side. I'm like, no, it doesn't work that way.
Is he a freshman?
He's a freshman at Lamar, yeah.
Okay, nice.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
Wow. Yeah, Dr. Raphael, it's a lot of information out there. And so Dr. Rouce just eloquently explained all of these terms to us. But how do you debunk the information, this whole misinformation in a way that people can kind of understand that? You know, what would be your recommendation?
Yeah, so my recommendation, it comes down to two things for me. One is the science and the other thing is stories. So what I mean by the science, it means find reliable sources of data. To me, the first place I go to is the CDC website, because that's sort of our major spokesperson in our organization for public health. And so you can look and they have all these questions on there, and then they provide the answers, just like we're talking about tonight. So if you feel like we talked tonight, I didn't get all my questions answered, you can go on that website. They have so many questions on there. You can go through them. And so I always go back to the CDC. That's a reliable source of information. You can get caught up with things on social media, rumors, other than that. And so one, that to me, that's where I get my science. And then stories to me is talking to people in my community, people who've been vaccinated, to get a sense of what was the process for them like? What were their hesitations? How did they overcome their hesitations? What were their side effects? So I think we all have an opportunity to be role models for each other and within our communities to really share our stories and not make it sound like it was straightforward. We all had our questions. We should be honest about them and then convey those stories to others in our community so they understand. And I think that way we're much more relatable and we're much more, a good model of what it means to get vaccinated and sort of contributing to a public health initiative like this one. So again, to me, it comes down to science and knowing where to find the science, not relying on social media so much, and then also truly just engaging with each other and really sharing our stories of why we chose to get vaccinated and what the experience has meant for us.
Now, share also talking to your doctor, because you may hear somebody who has something that happened to their cousin, sister's nephew, okay? And that really may have happened to him. It really may be true, but you don't know his medical history, okay? Your doctor knows your medical history. And so your doctor can answer your specific questions. And so CDC is the best site to go for. But sometimes, if you're not able to get everything you want from it and you still have questions, your doctor is there as a resource. So definitely take advantage of your doctors to ask those questions. We don't mind getting questions about that.
Not at all. And even if your doctor may not know the specific answer to that question at that time, they absolutely have the ability to find that answer. And so being armed with information is key. And I'll just point out, this vaccine has become so mainstream that we actually have data from the trials, and we have data from all these over 100 million people in the United States have received at least one vaccine. So when we hear about 6 people having something happen or 5 people having something happen, and we think about over 100 million people just in the United States alone have been vaccinated and have not had those things happen. And the fact that even when 6 people have something happen, they pause and reassess and make sure that it's safe. That continues to give me confidence as a physician, as a scientist, as a Black woman who has a Black family, who looks to me to say, I need to know what's up with this. I read this. So it's really important, and there's nothing wrong with asking the questions, but you have to absolutely make sure that you have a reliable source, which I think all of us 100% agree, CDC is where it's at.
Absolutely. And we just want to encourage those of you who are listening in, please go to the chat. We are providing information for you there. There will be links where you can get more information in regards to where the facts are that these healthcare professionals have spoke about on tonight. I just wanted to share a personal story and why there's such an affection for our family for Texas Children's Hospital. We have a son, he's our second oldest son, And he became deathly ill in 1999. And when he did, we did not know that he had developed streptococcal pneumonia. His left lung collapsed, his right lung was half filled with fluid, and the doctors did not think he was going to make it. Well, today he's 22 years old. And when I made the decision to get vaccinated, as my husband and I were praying about it, the Lord reminded me that. He reminded me that when my son was in the hospital and we were told that he wouldn't make it, and Texas Children's Hospital took great care of us while we were there those 7 weeks. But when they shared that with us, they came and they asked, they said, there's a study. Would you be interested in your son participating in this study right now? There's medicine available. We need your approval to give it to him, and we will see if it works. At that point, as a desperate mother and father, we wanted to do anything to help our son live. Well, we're grateful today. He's 22 years old. And it was that decision I was reminded of, that they gave my son some medication. It was trial medication that helped him live. And so my husband and I decided, you know what, we trust God. Like we are in between prayer and precaution. We're going to be cautious, but we're also going to get information. We're going to get facts, and we're going to trust God as we move forward with the information, you know, just trusting that you doctors, the healthcare professionals, the researchers have done your work to provide this for us. So for that, we are eternally grateful to God, and we are grateful to each of you just for the work you do. And as you're on the front lines, helping to save lives each and every day. I think we have some more questions that came in the chat, or is that just information?
I was just hallelujah.
Well, I just felt it was appropriate to share that with our audience as they are listening and trying to make a decision. So I don't know if there are any more questions coming through. We wanted to allow, just in this last few minutes of our forum, to ask you, doctors, is there anything else you would want to share that possibly we didn't cover, that you find is very important to get out there? We'd like you to use this platform to do so.
Yeah.
You know, one thing I would say is, you know, sometimes the question is this vaccine for us? Is it effective for us? Is it safe for us? And one thing that I think is, you know, Dr. White-Satcher has told in previous sessions that we've done together that one of the top scientists who helped develop the vaccine is actually an African-American woman. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people don't know that. And you've actually seen her on the cover of magazines or news stories, and she's out there out front. And so think of what that means, because, you know, when we think about all the mistrust from Tuskegee, what happened to Henrietta Lacks, a lot of the times is that research, you know, people who doing the research, the medical community didn't look like us. And now to think we're at a stage now in 2021 where the people who are doing the research look like us, the people actually leading look like us, that's a huge difference. So that should give us confidence, that should give us trust. And the other thing to mention as well is that in terms of all the clinical trials, they made a huge effort to get people of color into the trials because they wanted people to have confidence, to have trust that the vaccine was safe and effective for them. So again, you know, I think we've come so far from Tuskegee and the story of Henrietta Lacks to the point where now one of the leading figures in this fight is an African-American female. So I wanted to make sure everyone knew that tonight, because to me, that makes me so incredibly proud of where we've come as, you know, as a community.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I just want to share that even if you've gotten your vaccine, congratulations. Thank you for doing that. Getting your vaccine is helping not only to protect yourself, but protect your community. And so if everyone can, if you've gotten your vaccine, it's not over yet. Talk to your friends, talk to your family members. Don't be afraid to talk to people about it and encourage them to get their vaccines. And so if they're saying, I'm going to wait, I'm going to talk with them about why they're waiting and encourage them to understand that if they don't get the vaccine, that they're putting themselves at risk for serious disease. And so, you know, our job is not done until we make sure that we continue to encourage everyone to get the vaccine. As Dr. Rouce spoke about, we're trying to get to that, you know, herd immunity point, but we can't get there if everyone doesn't do it. And if we don't get vaccinated, if we don't get enough people vaccinated, that virus, it's a pesky little virus, and it's going to adapt and change and mutate. And then we're all back where we were before. So even those of us who were protected won't be quite as protected as we are right now. So please encourage your friends and family to get the vaccine. Talk to people about it. You don't have to badger them, but talk with them about it and make sure that you're helping to provide resources to them if they need them.
Very well said, both of you. I absolutely echo your comments. The one additional thing that I would add, when you encounter your friends and loved ones, and this may be you, who say, you know, I think I want to get it, but I'm not quite ready. This is what I want you to think about. I want you to think about the fact that calling the vaccine kind of movement Operation Warp Speed certainly made people feel a little bit hesitant and say, well, why did it happen so quickly? Did they skip steps? I'm going to put my researcher hat on for a moment as someone who does clinical trials. And I want you to know that I sat there and I read all 400 plus pages of all of the information submitted to the Food and Drug Administration and to the CDC so that my friends and loved ones didn't have to. And they didn't skip any steps. It's just that when you have a global pandemic, you have all hands on deck and things move a lot quicker. So for me, I wanted to see all of the data, and I wanted to make sure that they went through all of the same steps that you have to go through for everything else. And I wanted to make sure that there were representative populations. I looked at every single table. I looked at every single chart. I wanted to make sure there were people that had high blood pressure and diabetes and who were Black and brown and everything else included in the trials. I wanted to make sure that the safety was the same in older people versus younger people. I wanted to see that because my science mind needed to see it so that I would feel confident in encouraging people to get it. So I think it's important to understand that that information is fully available. No one wants to look at it because it's 400 plus pages, but you can find short synopses if you just Google COVID vaccine approval, and they actually give you little talking points where you can help reassure yourself. Because remember, our goals aren't to convince you, our goals are to provide you with the information so you understand this is between prayer and what you said earlier, prayer and
Precaution.
I'm gonna have to use that one. This between prayer and precaution, and every single thing that we do as physicians and scientists is because the Lord is giving us the skills and the strength to do it. And the same thing happened with this vaccine. So that made me feel better, and I hope that it gives you some comfort and you can share that comfort with your friends and loved ones also.
Wow. Just great insight, and just what a great night just take a moment and have a conversation, such a needed conversation for our community. It's 4 things I want to leave you real quick. Preachers have 4 things at least. First thing is, don't deny the data. Like, read the data, and the data is out there. I think what creates trust is transparency. And the mere fact that there's so much data out there, like, that should help to build trust. So first thing is that consider the data. And what we tried to do is the second D, we tried to have a discussion around the data. It's very critical that when you're making a decision that you consider the data and you invite the right people who can add value to a discussion. People who are on the front line, people who love you, people who care for you. And that's what we've been doing. So I want to encourage you to continue the discussion. And the third thing, discernment. We are people of faith. And so Torsh and I, before we decided to take the shot, we prayed about it. We prayed about it. And we prayed a little bit more about it. So I want to encourage you to consider the discernment and be prayerful and pray about it. And I believe that data, a healthy discussion, and discernment, it'll lead you to a decision. And if you can do that, I believe the Lord will lead you. And that's pretty much what Torsh and I was able to do in order to arrive at a decision. So we have taken our shot. My son has taken his shot, getting his second shot. we okay, and we're just trying to lead you, and we living in between prayer and precaution. And so this coming week, our outreach community, the Peace partners have partnered with Health Quest and Hope Disaster Recovery. And we have 300 free Moderna vaccines this Saturday, 9 a.m., 9800 Club Creek. Also second doses. No pre-registration. Walk-ins are welcome. And so we want to encourage you to spend tonight, to spend this time, consider the data, look at it, have a healthy discussion around it, right? And discernment. I believe that will lead to direction. That will help you to make a better decision. So Dr. Raphael, Dr. Satcher, and Dr. Rouce, thank you all so much. This, man, has been so insightful. This has been such a great conversation. I pray and hope everybody who's watching that you would share and that you would give this conversation your undivided attention. Come on, y'all. We can do this. Let's come together and let's make certain that we protect our community, our family, and our friends.
Thank you all so much. Tonight has been absolutely wonderful. We appreciate your time. We thank you for staying on the front lines for us.
Yeah, thank you all.
And we hope that our audience was helped by the information shared on tonight. Well, God bless you all. You have a great evening, and we look forward to seeing you all healthy and strong.
Yeah.
Thank you for inviting us.
You're welcome. Good night.
Thank you.